Bringing you conversations by Radio 537.
All the way in Cape Town, all the way in Cape Town, my good friend Kanya Nondolan. Kanya, are you there?
Oi, Toms, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's a great pleasure to have you here, man. It's been long overdue. Khawubulisa man kuwo wonke umuntu osemakhaya.
Yeah, ndiyabulisa kuwe wonke umntu omamele iRadio 537. Good evening to everyone listening from everywhere. Cape Town, my friends who are listening now.
Uh-huh.
Ndiyabulisa kuninonke.
Wow. Great. Hayi ke nibulise wherever you are listening. Nibuliswa all the way from Cape Town. Before we go into the conversation, Fundin, ndifuna kaloku candy. Let me pick your brain nje kancinci. If you were to say athi umuntu uba khawuzichaze ubuzawuzichaza uthini nje uzithi vandla ubuzawuthi uKhanya Nontolwana ngubani kanye.
Oh, gosh. Okanya is a regular guy, man. I'm a normal citizen.
Mm.
I just like reading books and knowing stuff.
Uh-huh.
I'm just like any young man in South Africa with a vision, with a
Uh-huh.
purpose, and working day by day to reach
Uh-huh.
my goals and my
Yeah.
dreams, for not only for my betterment, but for the betterment of others as well. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, nothing special, nothing.
So you say. But again, for those who don't know Kanye Ndolwane, he's this guy. And yes, we can't forget the pressure sometimes. The way that he reads and thinks and all of that. What's your drive behind you reading and always trying to equip yourself in terms of knowledge? In don't kubayo rather than just and I know you for one thing, go to public opinion. It's something that you always fight against. But at face value. What are some of the reasons why you decide or to be that person who's actively pursuing knowledge?
Man, it goes way back when I would come back from home and my mom would check my books, and
Mm-hmm.
was not doing well at that time, so I was forced to read almost on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So from that, I developed this culture of liking to read, because the more I read, I saw the results of it in the classroom. I would be ahead. I would have a certain advantage, and then it
Yeah.
grew into something that I love, and
Mm-hmm.
something that has benefited me
Yeah.
kakhulu in life. And yeah, it's basically knowing what you don't know that
Uh-huh.
drives me to read more, because the fact is, no matter how much books I read in my lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
there's still more knowledge that
Yeah.
I will not know. So for me, that's the scariest thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
To know so much, but knowing that you know little, even though you know so much. So yeah,
Yeah, and someone once actually put it like this: whatever, the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know anything.
exactly.
Wow,
One of the
wow.
philosophers said
Mm.
that wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. So
Hmm. So the more
so
that you actually get to
the drive.
realize, Ugote, there's still a lot that I need to learn. That is actually the real wisdom. Yeah. No, so let's get into it. Let's get into it. I know that Busosgiyare Sheila for this conversation.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, for someone on Genayo Ngawulumzuzu, we're talking about normalizing the abnormal. And before I even ask you any questions, when I brought up this topic and I told you about it, what came to your mind when I said normalizing the abnormal?
Well, the first thing that came into mind is uh, the current, what is happening now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's regarded as abnormal, yet people are slowly being ushered, or are
Mm-hmm.
ushering themselves into making it as normal as possible, living
Mm.
under the pandemic, and adjusting and living according to the cards that they are dealt now.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Of course, there are many abnormalities in the world that people have made normal. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, the first thing that came to mind is living under
Mm.
corona lo.
Yeah, yeah. Ne? So one
Yeah.
of my questions that I want to pose when you talk about this, what we are I believe this, and mhlambi ke if you don't agree, or there's a different view that you see this from, I see ukuthi, daily we are kind of living in a society that is gradually normalizing the abnormal. For instance, there are certain things like maybe 5 years ago ebesizibona zi-taboo, zifani, but today asiziboni as zifani anymore. How did we get here to this point yokuba sibone izinto that used to be kind of abnormal, used to be taboo, used to be subjects that are not talked about, things that are not done in public, but now all of a sudden zizinto ezenziwayo in public and akhontifani ngaloo nto.
Hey, you're getting straight into the nitty gritty. I see. Um, you know, times change, and as much as we hate to admit it, we
Mhm.
change as well with
Mhm.
time. So, uh, depending on how is he or she brought up,
Mm.
what kind of beliefs or what's the kind of thinking this person has. Well,
Mhm.
as you said, Connor is into 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even many years ago that were, taboo and
Mhm.
no one would speak about that. But now people are speaking freely.
Mm.
It's because of times. As time changes, I believe we are still in the process of evolving as a
Mhm.
species
Mhm.
in terms of our mind growth. Um,
Mm.
so the more we discover, the more ezinye izinto abnormal,
Mm.
be it good or bad, both sides of the coin, they
Mhm.
become normalized, generalized. Like I'll make an example of
Mhm.
uh, gay people or the LGBTQI community.
Uh-huh.
It's
Mhm.
something that was non-existent some years ago, and
Mm. Mhm.
people or men or who be holding hands or getting married to each other, well, that was somewhat taboo at that
Uh-huh.
time, and
That's true.
now it's something completely normal, right?
Yeah. Mm.
It's something completely normal. People don't they don't say anything about it because it's been normalized by
Mhm.
society. Is it
Mhm.
wrong? Well, that's up to you.
Mm.
That's your own opinion.
Mhm.
But the fact is, it has become normal
Mhm.
in everyday life. So yeah,
So again, and you've made an example of like the when you talk about the LGBTQI community, and this is something that was really taboo over the past years, and now
yeah.
you ask yourself ukuthi yenziwa yintoni le nto lena yokuba things that used to be taboo. Oh, mhlambi the question that I would ask ukuthi zintoni ezi zinto zisibeka to this point whereby we find ourselves ukuthi into ethile mani bendingayiqhelanga mani, eyi bendingayiqhelanga, and ibingeyonto bendizawuveske ndiyi-accept nje anyhow,
Yeah.
but 5 years
Yeah.
down the line hayi wethu hatyi, everyone is doing it.
First of all, you need to have an insight on what is regarded normal, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
normal, is to conform to a certain standard. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Normal is the usual, the typical, what
Mm-hmm.
is expected. It's
Uh-huh.
like a linear feature of society, a way of
Mm-hmm.
living, right? So now, when you have like this this typical everyday thing or an expected behavior
Mm-hmm.
or an expected function,
Mm.
and then all of a sudden, boom, that is flipped upside down. Well, we regard it as taboo
Mm-hmm.
sometimes because we don't know what it is, or we have insufficient knowledge of
Mm-hmm.
it. That's why we see it as abnormal. Anything that you don't know now, it's about, you will
Mm-hmm.
see it as abnormal, right? You see
And
it
I want to
alien,
come
you see
in
it,
there. I want to come in there
yeah,
because when we talk about abnormal and what you are bringing right now,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
there's a distinction there. You'll correct me,
Mhm.
Nalap. I think there's a distinction with things that we deem as abnormal and things that we deem as taboo and things that we actually deem as different, as alien.
Right,
Let me make an
right,
example.
right.
When technology came on board and brought us a phone, it was the technology was alien to us to such a point that
Yeah, yeah,
ibibafani laa nto leyo ukuthi gqi umntu ephethe ugqokomisa ufowuni omkhulu because people were used to having phones ezindlini. But with
yeah,
time, ifowuni seyiqhelekile. Anyone now uvesikothuk umntu kube ngaphethanga phone. But now, when you talk about other issues like the topics around how people dress, you talk about the topics around isn't there a polygamy, you talk about the topics around gay marriages, you talk about
mm,
identity politics and all of those things.
yeah,
Zizinto that I don't know how I may put it. They are not just
yeah,
alien to us, but
yeah,
they are also foreign and seem to be abnormal to us. But seemingly as ixesha lisiye lihamba zisiye ziba zizinto eziqhelekileyo esingazothukiyo anymore.
yeah. Yeah, man, it's true. It's you're exactly on the money, and the entire world, whether somebody has been through change
Mm-hmm.
and abnormalities throughout history,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm.
Yeah, true. I don't know how good are you in history, but it's one of my favorite subjects. You have
Mm-hmm.
historical figures who changed the world, like,
Mm.
even though the change sometimes was minor, but most of the time it was major, right?
Mm-hmm.
Characters like Alexander the Great,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ himself,
Mm-hmm.
Abu Genghis Khan.
Mm.
Those are people, like, examples of people who changed the world, because normal is only normal today because tomorrow the normal of today won't be normal anymore. It
Mm-hmm.
happens,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, as I said to you, Karin, the first thing that came into my mind was the corona. Hmm?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it changed the
Mm-hmm.
entire world. It was a cataclysm. It is a cataclysm. For
Mm-hmm.
it happened, and people don't know how to deal with it, because for our generation this
Mm.
has never happened before. But to
Mm-hmm.
someone who lived back in the past, they know about
Mm-hmm.
the plague, the Black Death, the one that killed 75 million of people across Europe as
Mm.
well. So it's basically interesting ayazi, and then we learn to live with it, I can say, or we learn to adapt with it,
Adapt. Uh-huh.
which sometimes is bad,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, depending on what it is.
Yeah, and you're driving me exactly to the next question that I wanted to ask. This normalizing of the abnormal, is
Yeah,
it good or is it bad? And I because here's the thing, Yabon, when we talk about and I want to drive you more to in terms of the society. There are a
right.
lot of things that are not what we used to, and we are normalized. Let me make an example. Today, into
Yeah,
yokuba nomntana in high school, ube una 21, ube like very, very at a very young age, that is something that has been normalized. You
yeah,
know, sexual intercourse amongst even young people that are not married, that is something that has been normalized.
normalized.
You see,
Yeah,
we will talk about that there are multiple things. Even I think maybe a year or two, in fact 3 years ago, izinto of transgenders ibizizinto besingaziqhelanga esingazaziyo esingava nokuva
yeah,
ngazo. But now there are things that are popping up, and I remember, which I think it was a month or two ago, where one of the countries where there's a celebrate ukuthi they've actually had someone hosting the news or a transgender. So The idea of normalizing the normal, is it good? That's question number one. And number two,
Yeah.
don't you think Ukuthi media has a huge role that it is playing, that impacts and influences this normalizing of the abnormal today?
Well, let me just make one thing clear.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, for us, there is no going back to normal. For me, for
Uh-huh.
my opinion,
Uh-huh.
is the new norm good? Well,
Mm.
it can be good, but it can be deadly,
Mm-hmm.
right? Normal is always going to be different somehow to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's the world. It's going to be constantly changing. So as the world is constantly changing,
Mm.
be it for better or worse, sometimes there are major changes that we go through, sometimes small and incremental, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we always have these two sides,
Mm.
positive and negative. So it depends
Mm.
on the attitude of the person towards the certain abnormality
Mm-hmm.
that they are facing or going through. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there are people who take into a transgender of people who are gay and they
Mm-hmm.
become violent about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
become violent, they start babetabantu and it becomes a mess. But there are others who embrace it,
Mm-hmm.
ne? Who say, listen, ngabantu nabo and everyone has a right to be who they want to be. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's a matter of the attitude yako to how you take the abnormalities, izinto ongaziqhelanga, and you deal with them in the way that you see fit to do wena ngokwakho.
Mm.
I remember, I think it was last week, I posted something on my social media that says you can swing your fist
Mm-hmm.
as far as the beginning of someone's nose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you decide to do, or no matter how you decide to react to your
Mm.
abnormal state, it can affect Obiumuntu negatively. That's the first point that we need to be it the normal is good
Uh-huh.
or bad. So
Uh-huh.
when how you adapt to it is completely up to you because
Uh-huh.
there are some abnormalities that are not good,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some who that 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 push us to evolve, to transform.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So there's something that you said there, Ogoti. You can only swing your fist as far as another person's nose begins. I don't know if I'm paraphrasing it, doing it justice
Yeah.
now.
You feel free to swing your fists around, but when my nose begins, you need to stop.
Now, I'm picking at that up because we are also
Yeah.
living in a society that is I can say highly sensitive. Does that, if I can say, analogy or quote, apply even to saying that you offend me?
Uh-huh.
Would it be fair to say that swinging your fist would actually you be touching my nose when you offend me in what I stand for? Or because you even touched on the fact that whatever that you believe in, whatever that you say, and whatever that you believe, it should not affect me. Zipilivele koneni yakho and do whatever that is good for you. So now my question is, in this kind of a system, does that only
Mm.
apply to the physical, or also when it comes to in terms of don't say something that will offend me?
Okay. I hear you. Very good question. Now, when I say fist, of course, I'm using a metaphor, right?
Aha,
But it
that's
applies
nice.
to everything that you do, right? It
Mm.
applies to everything you do, the words, your way of living
Mhm.
as a whole,
Mhm.
right? It's
Mhm.
not only a little better, but more than fists,
Mhm.
literal fists,
Yeah.
are words that are powerful to hurt people. They are people who die
Mhm.
inside
Mm.
because of your words. Your fists, you'll be hurt, but you recover. But
Mhm.
words, chance, ish, it's very deadly. So it does not only apply kwamanqindi ngesixhosa, but it
Mhm.
applies to even words and your way you you do things, but let them not affect um, other people negatively.
Yeah. So exactly ngoku apho, there's a question that I want to ask you. Okay, now can we ever have, especially when it comes to um, conversations, can we ever have true
Hmm.
conversations that are actually going to bring about a change, and in fact not only just bring about change, that will be able to address core issues of society, if we are so sensitized to say, whatever that you say, whatever that you do, make sure that it doesn't harm me? Because what I believe is, if we're going to have serious conversations that are going to transform life, that are going to impact, and conversations that will actually lead someone to think, it's going to be impossible, especially if we're speaking to the masses. It's going to be impossible to have not even a single person, for instance, I'm offended. So, can we ever be able to really have those conversations if we are so concerned about not uh, harming the other person, not being and the husbands are back and but it's as fun
Yeah.
to get into the other person's space, if I may put it like that.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, ndiyakuva uba uvuma indaba, ndiyakuva mnumzane. Listen, as you said, uh, when it comes to like core conversations, of which I believe they are overrated already, but
Uh-huh.
I'll continue. When it comes to core conversation about changing the direction of the world and blah blah blah,
Mm-hmm.
man, every time you open your mouth, chances are someone will get offended when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to serious matters. All
Mm-hmm.
right,
Mm-hmm.
you just have to live with that. But
Mm-hmm.
to offend someone out of intention and
Huh.
not intentional, it's night and day,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm.
We're talking about politics, or we're talking, as we're using this example kakhulu namhlanje, about people who are gay or identify themselves as gay and
Mm-hmm.
lesbian and trans. There are others who won't agree with it. There
Mm-hmm.
are others who will agree with it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So chances are those that don't agree with you will be offended to what you are saying.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is, it's your own opinion and you are entitled to it. However,
Mm-hmm.
your intention must not be to hurt, but
Mm-hmm.
to build. As you said, you're having a conversation, you want to change, you want to make the world better.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have two sides or even more sometimes. So
Yeah.
chances are someone will get offended, but it cannot be intentional.
Mm-hmm. I get you, I get you, I get you beautifully on what you are saying. And ndicela
Yeah.
nje sikhe siyosela amanzi, and when we come back we're going to continue with the conversation. Nje siyothi sip sip amanzi, and when we come back soqhubekeka with our conversation. Do stay tuned. Bethe chu now, and right now you're tuned into your late night show On the Table, and I'm your host Tobani Vomendaba. Mntasekhaya, let me go back to that conversation. Kanya,
Yep.
sekhona sesamandleni.
Silali thina bafundisi sihleli.
Uthi ngumhlalo ongalali.
For
So
sure.
that's you'll have in your mind the backdrop of the statement that I made just before we go to the song. But this is the exact question that I want to ask you. Now we find ourselves in this point whereby we are, normalizing the abnormal. Those things, what are the effects of this place that we are in, and le ndawo sikuyo of abnormal, yeah, Nkosi isilungu, of normalizing,
Normalizing, Toval, it's
normalizing,
normalizing.
normalizing the abnormal. Uh, how does it inform our behavior?
Wow, human behavior, man, it's
Uh-huh.
something that is fascinating. Before I answer that, I have to say nice songs, especially the second one. Yeah, yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now, when it comes to human behavior, listen, we are creatures of habit,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Know this. You stick to your routine. Any change in your routine, it becomes a little bit uncomfortable for
Mm-hmm.
you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But change does affect us. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
some different from others, both good and bad. That's why
Yeah.
we have to come to terms with a truth that I discovered as well,
Uh-huh.
that life will change. Ne?
Yeah.
There is a high probability that even the normal tomorrow will not be the normal of today,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
So what we need to do is we have to make the most out of our circumstances,
Uh-huh.
right? We
Mm.
should not resist good change. Ne?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, sometimes even bad change becomes good when you enter with a right mindset to it.
Elaborate on
So
that. On that. On that.
basically, you make the most out of the circumstance, right?
Okay. Okay.
You make
Mm.
the most out of it, and you know, example, clear
Uh-huh.
example, 4 seasons. We have 4 seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nah,
Yeah.
we make use of those seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Some we don't like some of them
Yeah.
or one of them. I
Uh-huh.
don't know. But even though you are in that season, like now, winter, it's tough for
Mm-hmm.
everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But to complain and resist winter will not do you any good.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
that is winter, you make the most out of it.
Uh-huh.
Some are selling scarves, selling hats. Me and my friends, we started selling e-jersey, and we're making most out of the season than
Uh-huh.
Mamas best complain ngaso. So
Uh-huh.
make the most of whatever the new normal looks like.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You don't necessarily need to adapt to it,
Uh-huh.
but you need to adapt for it. In other words, you need to be above it. You need to have that slight edge in approaching izinto that are abnormal in your life.
Uh-huh.
Human behavior is somewhat predictable,
Uh-huh.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if kuyatshisa
Mm.
uzobhekela, if kuyabanda, you look for somewhere that is warm. So
Mm-hmm.
see what you are going through, or what you are faced with, the
Mm.
abnormality, as an opportunity,
Mm.
right? Not an opportunity to complain, because
Uh-huh.
many people, when they see, like, when I'm talking about abnormalities now,
Mm-hmm.
so when I'm talking about umuntu mhlambi ebekhuluba nemali
Mm-hmm.
ngokakanayo imali, that's also abnormal to some
Mm-hmm.
people, not
Mm-hmm.
having money. But
Mm-hmm.
what I've seen kakhulu when it comes to Jambu City, how it affects human behavior, people, when they see something that is interfering with their routine, or that is not normal to them, they use the first opportunities they have to start complaining. So
Uh-huh.
that is not the way, and that will not benefit you in any form or shape. See what we are going through now, the
Uh-huh.
corona. It's
Mm.
it's not the end, but people are already saying it's the end. We're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the end. It's hard. It's difficult, but
Mm.
it will come to an end, right?
Yeah. And my question would be, you'll remember what the comment that I made earlier on about around media.
Yeah.
Uh, Around some of the things, especially izinto esingaziqhelanga bezitabu. I made a couple of examples earlier
Yeah.
on regarding teenage pregnancy, the highly sexualized society that we are living in today.
Mm,
Don't you think that to an extent, not to put the blame entirely, but to an extent, what somewhere somehow our media is is not is doing a disservice to us kwezinye izinto that it exposes us to. And I'm saying this on the backdrop and on the assumption that many people will understand that what we see on media, what we see on our television, what we see on our WhatsApp, what we see on our Facebooks, what we see on these social media platforms, you remember it's something that is repeatedly shown to us. Siyibona each and every day imane phindwa, and for that reason I believe it is some kind of normalizing of certain things. That is why we are able now to say 5 years ago into ethile besingayiqhelanga, and we wouldn't even consider it as into abesinoyithetha njengolu hlobo okanye into abesinoyenza nje in public, but because we are continuously being exposed to it on repetition, on rotation, on TV. You turn on your music, and on music, you turn on your TV program, you watch a series, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Don't you think that to an extent, media is playing a huge role in normalizing some of the things that we would term as abnormal?
Ah, man, you see, media is a giant in this world.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a giant, and uh, one time someone called the media an emperor, man, that is controlling most of people's behaviors. So
Mm.
it's quite it's quite it's quite tough to navigate through that one, but
Mm.
it's true
Mm-hmm.
and not true at the same time, because you decide what to watch, you
Uh-huh.
decide what you tune into. Like now, whoever is listening to this radio interview is
Uh-huh.
listening to it because they want to, they were curious to. So media out there, it can be used for certain agendas that are bad, né?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they seem to be the one that have the upper hand so far.
Mm.
But there is good in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you bank is what you withdraw to, man. If you're going to fill your head with bad media, bad images, and negativity, you you're going to have a negative outcome. So
Mm.
we don't control what happens in the media, but
Mm.
we do have the power to control our response towards it, and
And in
that is
that
a
line,
recipe for.
mm,
Sorry.
in that line of thought exactly, maybe I don't think this would be is going to be a fair question, but in general, how many people do you think are conscious? I mean, in their um, in their selection of what they watch on TV, on the social media platforms that they are on, and the type of content that they consume on those platforms. Because this is my personal and general idea around it. I don't think that there's as much of a number of people that are conscious of the impact of media in terms of, as you said, Ugothi, in terms of its power to kind of like influence our decisions and to normalize certain things. So, would it really be fair to say media it's responsible yet not responsible?
Somebody, you want to go in the cave, but you want to stay out in the sun as well. But let me tell you this. Let me tell you this, man.
Mm,
It's it does influence, nah,
mm,
good or bad, as I have said
mm-hmm,
before. But as to numbers and percentage of how many people do you think are conscious, I don't do numbers that I don't know. I need
uh-huh,
to give you proper good numbers.
mm,
You had a guest here the other day on the show who
mm-hmm,
gave numbers that were shocking. So
mm-hmm,
I don't want to give the wrong numbers. However, I will say this. I will
mm,
say this. When it comes to people choice in what they watch in
mm-hmm,
media or what they consume,
mm,
rather, it goes back to public, or I mean popular opinion,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
I want to watch what the others are watching,
uh-huh,
right?
uh-huh,
For an example, I'll make an example now.
uh,
Many of my friends, there was this money heist hype.
Uh-huh,
Ne?
uh-huh,
I don't know
uh-huh,
if it got to you. They're like, hey man, watch the Money Heist. Until today, I haven't watched the Money Heist
uh-huh.
because I don't want.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
many people are watching because abantu abaninzi
They're
bayayibukela.
watching it as
So
well. Uh-huh.
do you understand? So
Yes.
it becomes shocking.
Mm.
It becomes very surprising to see how people would rather follow
Mm.
public or popular opinion rather than stick to making decisions based on their own principles and their own grounds. Right.
Beautiful.
So
Mm.
right. So it's like umculo
Mm.
yonke into man kumanyela amapiano ngoku everyone will listen to amapiano kunxitywa
Uh-huh.
kanjena ngoku everyone will, not because they are conscious, not
Uh-huh.
because they want to blend in, they want to,
Mm.
but like sometimes that happens
Mm.
subconsciously, sometimes it happens because abantu bayafuna. I'm not judging anyone, right?
Uh-huh.
But in terms of numbers, I that also wafumana manana pha kum.
And I want to ask you, and this is something that you said to me the other day. Yokuthi, you don't like just going with the wind with the public opinion. Why is that important to you?
Tobani, hey, mfundini ake ndalahleka okokuqala etreyinini eCape Town station.
Uh-huh.
Khona itrain erongo because wonke umuntu wayeya kulaa train shiya le i-right mfundini.
Wabanga umxhaka,
ndayolahleka eSimons Town,
Mm.
Tobani. So indawo enabantu abaninzi for mna, rather than being safe
Mm.
and questioning it less, it brings more questions.
Ah.
And
Why is it flocking inside? Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I've learned that okokuqala endaweni abantu abaninzi there is so much of that resource you can get because everyone is there.
Yeah.
But indawo engenabantu abaninzi, chances are that certain resource that is there, you are going to have it to its fullest, right? I'll give you an example of what I'm saying. Everyone believes a certain thing, the public opinion of this. The ANC destroyed the country. And you're like, oh, hold on. Instead of me just saying, just because abanye abantu bayatsho, let me ask, why do you think the ANC is destroyed? No, you must join us there. No, you want to find out. You grow more when you want to know more, not when you follow more. When you follow more, you know less. When you want to know more, that's where you grow more. So now the public opinion, I mean, that public opinion, like, it's needs, man.
Yeah,
It becomes something that raises it.
Popular opinion.
Yeah, popular opinion. I want to know why you guys following
This.
what you are following rather than me being gullible and following everything. Njengoba benitshilo kuwe ndalahleka mfondini etrainini because ndandibona abantu bonke they are going, you know, the confusion in the train station and then ndalahleka.
Yeah.
So now think of that in a scale of someone's life. Someone who's basing their entire decisions based on popular opinion. Hey, Toban.
It's a mess.
It's
a mess. It will be a mess. Well, let me take here a message on our WhatsApp. It in the society esiphila kuyo. Things that are not in the space or in a day-to-day lifestyle, it's always regarded as abnormal. No one wants to learn something, and we are always resistant to change. Abantu, when they need to normalize izinto, they always talk about not wanting to be relevant and abazozichinja because of new things. That is coming from Daniel Pete. Seemingly, but abantu, they don't want to normalize izinto. Well, that is comment esuka phaa. Ndifuna ke mntana wakonontolwana nje ndikuthi vandla and nawe utsho your last words so that we can close off our conversation namhlanje. It was great having you In terms of everything that we're talking about, Kauchman, your last words.
Ah, Toban, it was a fantastic interview. Mama Daniel
Mm.
or if it's a bubble, I don't know. It's true. I want to they are resistant to change, but
Mm.
that doesn't stop change from coming.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Mm.
Charles Darwin said, "You adapt or you die."
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
So whether you are resisting a change
Doesn't mean it will
does
won't
not mean
come.
that change will stop.
Mm.
No one wants a storm to come, but the storm is coming. You can't change that. Right?
Yeah.
Now, my last words.
Mm.
Perception, Tomani. Instead of seeing abnormalities
Mm.
as threats, we
Uh-huh.
should have a perception of what it will be for you
Mm.
that you will gain from that certain change that is going there. Be it
Mm-hmm.
a moment of reflection on yourself, a
Mm.
moment of you seeing your life in another light.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm.
as we are discussing now, my cousin, when I
Mm.
was asking her about what she thinks Uziega said it, we are under a paradigm shift,
Mm.
right? A watershed moment. And it's true. So
Mm.
people need to learn that it's good that they use change to rehabilitate themselves,
Mm-hmm.
to rebuild, to restructure their lives. Number two, the action, the response towards it. You
Mm.
know, problems come with solutions
Yeah.
for those who think like that. People
Mm-hmm.
forget that last line. So, you need to be creative when it comes to you
Wow.
need to know what to do.
Mm.
Now, last thing, Giovanni, it's the will, your
Mm-hmm.
inner fortitude.
Mm.
Mawuqine ngaphakathi, uzazi. You will
Mm.
never follow popular opinion even though you don't have to. You'll
Okay.
never be under any kind of pressure that
Mm.
will lead you to make decisions that you later regret because you have a will, you have the inner fortitude with you.
Mm.
One time I was reading on the book Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
One of his factories burnt, Trobani. Did you know that? One
Mm.
of his factories,
Costed him. Mm. I remember. I
yeah,
remember the story of the
he
guy.
called he called his son and said, "Go get your mom
Mm.
and get your aunt because they'll never see a fire big like this again." So he was supposed to be crying,
Mm.
screaming, but because of his inner fortitude, he
Mm-hmm.
saw the problem at a different light. So
Yeah.
let us know, Uguchi, certain changes, though sometimes they are abnormal,
Mm-hmm.
let us approach them in a way that will benefit us. Am I saying adapt to everything? No. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying wena yini ongayenza that will help you in that situation at that time.
Hayi ke uyitye yonke ufumene 120 over 100. Thank you so much, my brother, for joining us this
Nah, the
evening.
pleasure is all mine. The pleasure is all mine. I hope this is not the last time. Kinda caught them.
Definitely not the last time. I still want to pick your brain and bring the conversation that we had the other night as Conan is it here on this platform on Radio 537. One of these days it
Yeah,
has
yeah.
to be brought here. So otherwise, thank you so much. Thank you so much, my friend. And I know that ukhona kuwo onke la makhasi onxibelelwano bakufumana as ukhanya nontolwana oqomba hey hayi nantsi intele ibithetha phana ufuna ikhe
Yeah.
ndiyibone.
Yeah, yeah. One last thing, I would like to say good night.
Yeah.
Mameleyo
Yeah,
from here, Cape Town, from
uh-huh.
Yeah, Stephanie who's listening, to Rotando,
Uh-huh.
Ziyeka,
We
Mama, and everyone else. Yeah.
hayi ke sibulisile kuwo wonke umntu nantsi ingoma ke zakhupha ngayo ke mtshanam nantsi ingoma endizakhupha ngazo ingoma ongayiqhelanga ethi mtshele by Afro Traction. Otherwise, have a great night, bro. It was nice chatting
Good
with you.
night. Thank you, Chief. Ciao.
Sure.